I just finished You, and y'all, what the actual... Free my man Joe. He's innocent. We're all a little toxic sometimes. I'm just kidding. What we need to be doing is throwing away the key and double checking he don't have one secretly stashed inside his body. The fact that I even have to say that should tell you how unhinged this show got by the end. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Cammie, and this is Thanks, I'll Take It From Here, the podcast where we break down the stories that made us feel something, challenge the ones that almost went somewhere bold, and sometimes rewrite the ones that missed their moment. Make sure to follow the show, leave a review, and send this episode to someone who still defends Joe Goldberg, because clearly they need someone to hold their hand through this, and I'm gonna be the one to do it. So let's get into it. After 5 seasons of stalking, murder, emotional gymnastics, we finally end with Joe in jail. This season also gave us some new characters, but still that maximum mess. We meet Kate's chaotic twin sisters, one whom murders the other, because I guess Joe decided to outsource the killing this year. But it gets worse. Not only did she murder her twin sister, the surviving twin had been secretly sleeping with her dead sister's man, like, for a while. And after murdering her sister, she assumed her sister's identity. Despite all of that, the show ends with her pregnant, forgiven, serving no jail time, and living happily ever after with her dead sister's man, y'all. Then there's her brother, Teddy. Honestly, Teddy is the only man I've ever truly loved on this show. He was the most grounded character this season, and I feel like he reacted to Joe being a serial killer exactly how we all should have been reacting day one, with a side eye and a call to the police. Now, Kate, she went full vigilante. She made it her mission to finally take down Joe. And you know what, y'all? She did that. And just when we thought she was dead, she somehow survived getting shot and locked up in a burning building. I don't know how, but we just gonna call it Netflix magic. Last we get Bronte and her little band of misfits, including Dr. Nikki's son. And if y'all remember Dr. Nikki, he was the one that got blamed for Beck's death in season 1. And he was kind of inappropriate as a therapist. He's over here smoking weed with his clients and hooking up with one of his clients. I'm not a therapist, but I'm pretty sure they probably tell you like day one that you shouldn't do that. But anyway, so the son is in Bronte's little Scooby-Doo in the gang. And he seemed to have inherited his dad's lack of respecting people's boundaries because he was acting a fool in that show. But let me get back to Bronte. So she started out catfishing Joe to expose the truth about Beck's murder, but somehow ended up as his love interest. Like, homegirl lost the plot and she fell head first for the love bombing. Now, somebody send this to a writer on the show. I know somebody got an auntie, cousin, uncle, mom, dad, or something that was a writer on this show. I need you to send them this podcast because I have a question. Were we supposed to relate to Bronte? Was she meant to be our stand-in? Because she spent most of the season making excuses for Joe before finally listening to the people he hurt. And I think the writers were hinting at something deeper, that we, the audience, have been doing the same thing. Was that the point of the final season? To make us reflect on the way we excuse Joe too? Maybe. But I'm not convinced Bronte was the best character to deliver that message, especially not this late in the game. Like, girl, we don't even know who you are. We were calling you the wrong name for like most of the season. And listen, I would have cut a lot of her scenes. I'm sorry, y'all. I had to say it. I think the whole post-fire lake house arc could have been cut. We didn't need that whole detour. Like, I appreciate that they used that as an opportunity for her to get Beck's book edited down to just her words. Like, I think that was sweet. Kudos to them for that. But I think what we needed was aftermath, right? We needed to see the consequences. We needed justice. And I'll get into how I would have rewritten the finale a little bit later. But Don't get me wrong, I see what the show tried to do. It was ambitious, but also low-key kind of manipulative. Especially that moment when Joe stares in the camera and says, "Maybe it's you." Sir, what you mean me? Now why am I in it? But fine, I'll bite. Because as messy as that line was, it does ask something worth exploring. It wants us to reflect, and maybe we should. I saw a TikTok where someone said, "We all dated a Joe." And at first I was like, have we? Who is we? But then I thought about it. And yeah, I've definitely dated guys who thought they were the nice guy, you know, emotionally self-aware on the surface, but underneath, passive-aggressive, avoidant, and just charming enough to keep you confused. I've fallen for that act. I've made excuses for that act. Thankfully, none of them were out here actually murdering people in my honor. I mean, if they were, I would have just folded for a free trip or $1 million. Like, you wouldn't have to hurt anyone. I guess unless it was like an evil billionaire, because then like maybe they had it coming. But wait, y'all, this is how it starts. I get it now. We might really be the problem. He's right. It is you and me. But as I said, I feel like we all have dated a Joe-like character. And if you're still listening, or if you've ever dated a Joe, go ahead and hit follow, because clearly we got some healing to do together. But let's be honest, for years, people thirsted after Joe. To the point that Penn Badgley had to step in and be like, "Y'all know Joe is toxic, right? Y'all know Joe is a serial killer, right?" And I think it says a lot about the kinds of men we give the benefit of the doubt to in fiction and in our real life. Joe was presented as this intelligent, book-loving, soft-voiced man with trauma. And I think a lot of people mistook that for depth. Like, sure, he's attractive, he's articulate, and he has childhood wounds. I think people kind of fell for that, right? And they were like, he's not that bad, he's complicated. But y'all, he's a serial killer. Be for real. Now, if you ever wondered how people ended up following cult leaders, this is the pipeline. It starts with someone who makes you feel seen, even while they're hiding the worst parts of themselves. Joe isn't some misunderstood anti-hero. He's a textbook narcissist with obsessive control issues. He kills people who inconvenience his version of love. And yet, the show let him narrate every step of it. We lived inside his mind. And I think that had a real effect on how some people saw him. But here's the thing. When the story is only told from the predator's point of view, it's easy to forget about the victims. And Joe's victims weren't all perfect, sure. Some were flawed, selfish, messy, but that's life, that's humanity. Their imperfections never justified their deaths. I mean, maybe some of them. Let me stop. See, this is how it starts, y'all. Anyway, I do appreciate that the show started to shift focus in the later seasons, giving us more time with the fallout, with characters like Marianne and Bronte, but I still felt like it pulled his punches because they let Joe control the overall tone. Now, let's talk about the ending. While I like the idea of turning the camera on the audience, I think the execution was kind of shallow. I think it was a bit fast and a little too neat. Joe's arrest sure was satisfying because this man done spent 5 seasons killing people. But then it skipped the actual reckoning. It left so much potential on the table. What the show needed was an ending that forced Joe to confront everything he's done and force us to sit with why we ever found him likable. So here's how I would have rewritten the finale. The U finale tried to show us justice. We got Joe arrested, Bronte empowered, and the fantasy finally broken. But it happened too fast. If I were writing the final episode, I'd keep that moment of arrest, but then slow everything down after it. That final hour would unfold in the aftermath. not just legally, but emotionally and socially. Joe would go to trial, but instead of making the trial about him, the episode would center around the people he hurt. We'd hear from survivors, from the families of his victims. Their story would take up space, not filtered through Joe's voiceover like we got when seeing him react to all the people coming out, sharing their stories after he murdered Dr. Nikki's son. We wouldn't get Joe trying to twist and manipulate us into thinking they're wrong and he was justified. So I think I would really have him sit and hear the weight of every life he tried to narrate away. And as Joe listens, unable to interrupt, because you know he loves control, I think we would see something break in him, not for redemption, but realization that he was never the hero, that he didn't kill for love, he killed for control. And the episode wouldn't stop there. It would turn towards us. Because let's be real, a lot of people rooted for Joe. They said things like, he's not that bad, or at least he's not like other killers. My finale would use the courtroom not just to hold Joe accountable, but to hold us accountable too. Why did we ever excuse this man? Why did we mistake trauma for goodness? Why did we romanticize a predator? This wouldn't be a lecture. It wouldn't be to shame the audience, but it would be to leave us with something heavier than a cute song and a stare into the camera. It would leave us questioning the stories we consume and the stories we tell ourselves about good guys who do terrible things. Because in a world full of Joe Goldbergs, it's not enough to just recognize the monster. We have to ask why we ever let him feel like the main character, period. Now, before we wrap up, I want to introduce you to a young author whose work really caught my attention. His name is Alastair, and he recently published The Silent Hunt. It is a psychological thriller that dives deep into the mind of a very complicated protagonist. Since this episode is all about untangling how fiction plays with morality, I brought on someone whose novel dives deep into that very theme. Alastair, thank you so much for joining me. Let's jump right in. What inspired you to write The Silent Hunt?
I was just bored, a little lonely, and had way too much time on my hands. So I started reading a bunch of thriller novels to keep my mind busy. Somewhere along the way, I got this idea. The Silent Hunt was never supposed to be a novel. It was meant to be a short 6-part series I'd post online. But then I kept going, and it all just kind of happened by accident. But looking back, it was my way of dealing with loneliness and everything I was feeling at that time. I didn't plan for it, it just sort of became a novel, I guess.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to pair our conversation with my breakdown of the TV show You on Netflix is because both stories dive into how trauma shapes people's choices. In the show You, the main character's trauma heavily influences his actions. So how does Victor, the main character in your novel, how does his paranoia and trauma affect the decisions he makes throughout your book?
Victor's trauma ran deep. His childhood was rough. An absent father and a drugged up mother who later got arrested. Victor was buying his mother liquor at 7 and bouncing from one foster home to the next. Nothing ever felt safe or stable for Victor. Victor then joined the military hoping for some kind of freedom, and for a while it kind of worked. But then his helicopter got shot down during a mission and everyone on board died except for Victor. That moment changed everything for Victor. The PTSD, the guilt, the nightmares. They hit him hard. So he went back to what he knew best. Victor hid, he ran, and he started killing. This part didn't make it into the book, but Victor started with animals. He would go hunting in the wild, but then he started killing people. He called them his little adventures, stalking his targets until the world got quiet, then making his move. His paranoia has always been there, but it gotten worse after he killed a girl named Emily in the woods. After that, he felt like he was being hunted. So once again, he ran. Victor's whole life is shaped by survival. His trauma doesn't just affect his action, it defines them. So I guess to answer your question, basically Victor had a rough childhood, and after the accident in the helicopter, then that's what shaped his actions.
Interesting. That's just like in the show, the protagonist has a lot of childhood trauma, and that definitely is what influences the way he just behaves and reacts when things don't go his way. So, in You, many viewers felt conflicted about Joe. Some wanted him to get away with his crimes, and that reaction made some feel disturbed. I think part of this comes from how the character frames himself as the good guy, even though he is a serial killer, and we all know he's a serial killer. Since many of his victims are portrayed as bad people, a lot of the viewers saw his actions as justifiable. It's really not until the final season, or even maybe the final two seasons, that we get more insight into how his behavior impacts other people, especially his victims and the loved ones of his victims. The shift in perspective makes it clear that Joe isn't an anti hero, he's the villain. Does The Silent Hunt explore similar gray areas around morality? And how do you want readers to feel about Victor in the end? Is he a hero, or is he just a villain, or is he complicated?
This is a good question. I never wanted people to wonder if Victor's action were justified because they're not. But what I did want for readers to understand why he became the person he was. Victor Kane isn't a villain to me. He's someone who went through so much way too young. He grew up with an absent father and a mother who was either drunk, high, or completely gone. And by the time she was arrested, Victor was already broken. Then came the foster homes, the military, the trauma. Victor survived a helicopter crash that killed everyone else on board, and he lived with that every single day. Mental illness is seriously no joke. Victor struggled with severe PTSD, but he didn't understand it, didn't talk about it, and he didn't know how to ask for help. So Victor ran. And running wasn't enough. He turned to what he knew best, violence and survival. So I don't want readers to see Victor as the bad guy. I hope they see the pain, the fear, and the boy who grew up without safety. Victor just wanted peace.
But he didn't know how to achieve it
Yeah.
in a
So,
healthy way. I would think he didn't know how to
yeah.
achieve it in a healthy way. That's very
Mhm.
similar to Joe, the main character in You. He justifies everything that he's doing because he says he's doing it for love, and we know that that's not how you show love, right?
Yes.
We know that's not the healthy way to show
Yeah.
love, is by murdering people. So that's really powerful. Is there anything else you wanted to add about your book, or where people can find you? Any upcoming books you have releasing? Is Victor's story going to continue after the Silent Hunt? Or is that a spoiler if you answer that?
Well, I am planning on making the Silent Hunt Part 2 because I was thinking of continuing Victor's story in more depth. Basically, it's just the same book, but a longer version. And to find me, you can search up Alistair's Desk on Instagram and you can find me there.
I will also include Alastair's socials in the show links, so you can go there to connect with him and see what else he will have out soon. Thank you so much, Alastair, for sharing your insights and your incredible book, The Silent Hunt. If you love deep dives into movies, TV shows, and books, follow Thanks I'll Take It From Here wherever you get your podcast. And for bonus content, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Take It From Here Pod. Thank you again, Alastair. This has been another episode of Thanks I'll Take It From Here. Make sure you subscribe, follow, or leave a review. See you next time.